Hi guys, my name is Michael. Welcome back. So in this video, we'll be talking about one of our favorite projects on the channel, and that is Shiba Inu. And as you guys know, I haven't done a video on Shiba in a while, but regardless of that, I keep my eyes on this project because there's a lot of interesting things going on for Shiba that I believe a lot of people are not paying attention to. And since we last talked about Shiba, there's been a lot of development. The dApp store is now live. So the third-party app store, on Shibarium is now live. So developers can create third-party apps and sell them or make them available for use in the ecosystem. And that is a huge milestone for the team. And that's one thing I like about this Shib team. There's always something going on. I mean, this project has come a long way from being a meme coin, right? So very interesting project. But today I want to talk about a few things that we need to get around our head. When you hear people talk about sheep, right, and when you hear people talk about the possibility, of this project going to price points like 50 cents, 1 cent, a dollar, right? When you speak to anybody who understands crypto and tokenomics, they will say it is impossible for sheep to do this. And they are right. I mean, in their own way, they're right? When they look at factors like the supply of the token, and market cap and all these things, it makes it look almost impossible that, we could ever see such price points with SHIB, right? Because people will talk about the fact that, for you to see a dollar, then, the market cap would need to be in the trillions and all that. But I believe that one of the things people are not paying attention to is the fact that, first of all, Shiba is now a deflationary token. So a lot of tokens are being burnt, not as fast as we want them, but they are happening behind the scenes. So tokens are being pulled out of the pool, permanently, right? And so that's something to take into account. But let's take a look at a few things that will just make you, sort of scratch your head about what is going on behind the scenes with SHIB. So when we go to CoinMarketCap, when you look at SHIB, right, you take a look at the total supply. It says here 589. As you guys know, I think in the creation of SHIB, it was 999 trillion, and then you had a 410 trillion was burnt by the founder of Ethereum permanently. So I think that's how we got to this number 589 trillion, right? And this is the max supply, so no additional SHIB can be created, and all that supply is in circulation. That's the whole idea of SHIB. Now this dashboard here doesn't give you a good picture of the current situation of things, because I'm not sure this has been updated for a while, right? Because when you come here and look at it, it just feels like, you've got 589 trillion SHIB out there. Who's going to buy it? How will you get to $1? The market cap would need to be astronomical to even think about 1 cent or even 5 cents or even a dollar, right? But people don't take into consideration the amount of SHIB that is being burnt behind the scene. Another thing that people don't take into consideration is the amount of SHIB available on exchanges. Let's take a look at the chart here. So if we go into this chart here, this is a chart showing the amount of SHIB that is available across exchanges, and it uses data from major exchanges like Robinhood, Coinbase, Kraken, all these exchanges. It pulls the data of the amount of tokens available on the exchanges, and that is what you're seeing here. Let me just take this let me take my photo away from here. So if you take a look at this, it says here at the beginning of July 2022, we had over 200 trillion SHIB on the exchanges, and you can see gradually that number has been coming down, right? It's been coming down gradually, which is a very good, progression, right? Coming down. And so we see here that in the beginning of 2025, we have this huge drop of the amount of SHIB that was pulled out of the exchange. So this is showing you what is available on the exchanges. And the price for the token is gotten from the exchanges. As you guys know, everything, even SHIB, is subject to the laws of supply and demand, right? So if the supply outweighs demand, prices will fall. If demand outweighs supply, prices will rise up. So from this chart, you can see that a lot of SHIB is coming out of the exchanges, right? As a matter of fact, in January of this year, we saw that over 30 trillion SHIB left the exchanges. In one of those transactions, 20 trillion left at once from the exchange. So what we have here from 2022, where we had close to 190 trillion SHIB on the exchanges, what we have left right now is 95 trillion SHIB on the exchanges. So we can see that over 60% or so have left in the last 2 years. And this big drop here is very, very important, right? And you might be asking, what does this mean? What does this mean for, for people, for us as investors holding Shib? And I'm going to break that down to you. Let's just take a look at this article here. So it says here, Shiba Inu exchange reserve plunged to record lows. Is a supply shock brewing, and you guys might have heard the word supply shock before. If you think about what happened to GameStop, all those stocks at one point, that was a squeeze, something called a squeeze, which is also like a supply shock as well. So let's just take a look at it here. It say Shib exchange reserve have fallen to their lowest in years. The current reserve balance across major exchanges sits near 96 trillion Shib, a sharp drop from the 180 trillion seen in early 2024. So in early 2024, there was 180 trillion Shib on these exchanges, and now there's only 96 trillion, right? So close to half is gone in less than a year, right? Let's say in the last 12 months, over half is gone. This drastic reduction signals that fewer tokens are now available for instant trading, which could tighten supply and potentially push price higher if demand picks up. And we talked about this, right? If the demand outweighs the supply, the prices will have to go up, unfortunately, right? So if we continue to see this drop in Shib across the exchanges, it means that there will be a tight supply of Shib. And this is something that nobody is talking about. No one is even expecting to happen, because when people go on CoinMarketCap, when they see 589 trillion, they just believe that, what, there's an oversupply of Shib. No one is ever contemplating that there could be a scarcity of Shib at some point. It is not in anybody's radar that there could be a scarcity, because what everybody has in their head is that there is an oversupply of Shib, 589 trillion. That's a lot of Shib out there, right? But no one is taking into consideration this scenario. And that is why I feel like, we may see a squeeze on Shiba at some point. If things continue in this direction, if things continue in this the trajectory, right, we could see a supply squeeze on Shiba, which will send the prices way beyond what people are not, what people are comfortable with, if I can put it that way. So let's take another look here. It says throughout 2025, the decline in Shiba Inu exchange reserve has been steady, but in recent weeks, the drop has accelerated. So we can see that chart there, right? You can see the decline has been, steady. But this drop here is what they're talking about. Now, if you think about this, right, this drop here was basically pulled by one transaction. So if you have 4 or 5 of these kind of drops, right, it could cause a squeeze. And we don't know who is responsible for this drop here. But if you had like 4 or 5 of these drops, right, think about it, 20 trillion. If you had it in 5 places, this could cause a huge move in Shib that a lot of people might not be paying attention to. Let's go back to the article. He said this coincides with the increased market interest as prices briefly rose to 0.00017 earlier in May before pulling back to 0.000015 range. Let me go here. A supply shock. So we're talking about what a supply shock looks like, right? A supply shock basically is when there's not enough Shib for instant trading. Remember, there's a lot of Shib. There's about 4 or 5 trillion Shib locked in staking and all those sort of protocol things, right? They're locked in there and all that. So what will happen if all of a sudden there's not enough Shib in the exchanges for instant trading? That is when you would have a supply shock. This is what they're talking about, a supply shock. And let's just read what a supply shock will look like. A supply shock occurs when available supply suddenly becomes limited. When available supply suddenly becomes limited while demand remains the same or increases, with Shib's exchange balances dropping and no significant rise in new supply. Remember, there cannot be new supply. There cannot be any more creation of Shib, because that's the max. The stage is being set for such a scenario. If demand increases, perhaps triggered by a bond event, major news, or a broad altcoin rally, prices could rise quickly due to limited sell-side liquidity. And these are the things that, a lot of people are not taken into consideration, right? If what they're saying here is that if there was a sudden burn event, let's say somebody just wake up tomorrow and just decide to burn 30 trillion Shib, or do something crazy, or there was some sort of news that made people demand for Shib, right? We could see a supply squeeze in in Shib. Basically, the amount of Shib available will not be enough to satisfy the demand that is coming in, right? It could be even a buy the rumor, sell the news. Let's say, for instance, there's a news out there that X is partnering with Shib. That could send a huge wave of demand into Shib. And what you may see is that the supply may not be enough to meet the demand, meaning that people will be requesting for Shib and the price of Shib will go up. Now, these are all scenarios. Remember, these are all scenarios, but these are things that we need to keep at the back of our mind. When people say it's impossible for Shib to get to 1 cent or 50 cents, they are not taking these things into consideration. That is what I'm trying to say here today. So let's go down further. And one of the things that you will see is that all this decrease in exchange is not affecting the price of Shib, right? Because the whole idea is that Shib is still, is oversupply, so it's out there. So all this decrease in exchanges is not affecting the price. Normally, when you see a decrease in the availability of a token, right, it should affect the price. But in the case of Shib, it's not affecting the price because everyone just believes that there's always going to be a lot of Shiba out there. But one thing that we may see is a supply squeeze in Shiba. And I know this is not, it looks improbable at the moment, but this is something that could happen if the right events come together, if the right bricks come together, if the right factors come together, we could potentially see a supply squeeze in Shiba, and no one knows where that price will go to, right? No one knows if it's going to be 1 cent or 50 cents. We don't know, depending on how tight the squeeze is. We all saw what happened to GameStop, right? GameStop, right? When there was so much short positions, there was not enough stock out there. The prices rose astronomically, right? So no one knows how far or how tight a squeeze will send the price, or how far a squeeze will send the prices to. But this is something that we need to have at the back of our minds. So if I want to show you one last thing. If you take a look at the bond tracker, like I said, a lot of tokens are being burnt daily, not as huge as we would like them, but little by little, it is being, they're chopping off that a massive supply that has been there. So you can see that, in the last 8 hours, there was 4 point something million bond, 14 million, and it's just going. And this is happening on a daily basis, right? So if we continue on this pace of burning tokens on a daily basis, think about where this will be, say at the end of the year or next year or things like that, right? So eventually, I believe that, Shib will be more valuable than it is today. This is why I myself, I'm positioning, I am bullish on Shib, right? And I continue to be bullish on Shib, and I continue to strengthen my stakes in this particular project because I just believe that with everything they are doing, and this is not, again, Shib is no longer a meme coin, right? There's utility, there is community. All the factors that make for a good project is present with Shib, right? So this is why, I continue to be bullish in this. And, perhaps, by God's grace, the factors line up and we do see that supply squeeze that we're talking about. It will be, it won't be something that you want to miss, if I can put it that way. So these are all possibilities that could play out, right? If the right factors align, right? And that is why I want to bring to your attention that it is possible. So when people say it's not possible for Shib to get to 50 cents, to 1 cent, to 5 cents, to $1, it is possible. We just need the right factors to align, right? As we can see from the amount of Shib available on exchanges, if we continue on at the same pace, if we have the same drawdown from the exchange like we've seen here happen 2 or 3 more times, then we are in for a ride. This is not something you would want to miss, if I can put it that way. Anyway, guys, I just thought I'd bring this to your attention. Again, not financial advice to get into Shib or anything, but if you like videos like this, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.